Welcome to Shul.com. Today we're learning about ESAV and Elifaz, their wives, children, the whole family. This you could call the housewives of ESAV and Elifaz when you see the way this worked out. So let's begin. First, ESAV, he has really 4 children, but I brought 5 there because one of them is a Mamzer. We're going to look into that. And then he has 3 wives. So let's go with the first one. The first one is Ada. Ada, her other name is Basemat, and she's Bat Elon HaChiti. Chiti, remember that was the family. Yitzhak and Rivka were not happy about ESAV going to the Chiti. They were from one of the Canaanite nations, one of the nations in Eretz Canaan that were not accepted by Abraham, and it brought Morat Ruach to Rivka and to Yitzhak. So he marries Ada. Now Ada, the name originally comes from the word Edi, which is jewelry, that she worshipped gold, silver, and precious metals, and used those as a form of worship to her, avodah zarah, and idol worship. Another one is Basemat, from the word Besamim, that she would, maktit de ketor. If you ever go to Manhattan, you see those incense where they put them in front of the Buddhas. That's what she did for a living. Well, Ada ends up having the Bechor for ESAV, and that's Elifaz. You see the word Eli means my God, and Paz is gold. So even from the name Elifaz, Elipaz, my God is gold. And they ended up naming her that. Now, the second wife is Basemat, and her other name is Machalat. She is Bat Yishmael. She comes from that family, and Achot Nebayot. Why does the Torah tell us Achot Nebayot? Because originally she got engaged while Yishmael was alive, but Yishmael ends up dying at age 137 when ESAV is 63 and Yaakov begins running away. Because of the Beracha B'Yishak, and so it says Achot Nebayot, that when Ishmael died, he ended up marrying her off, and I guess walking her down the aisle. So with Basemat, he ends up having a son Reuel. So that's his second son. First one Elifaz, second one Reuel. Then he has a third wife, Aholibama, and they also call her Yehudit. But she was a she did a lot of trickery, and she tricked Yitzhak in thinking that she was righteous when she was not. She was Oved Avodah Zarah. She's Bat Ana, and Bat Sivon, and Bat Se'id. Se'id is a Chivi. He's from the nation of the Chivi, also a nation that was not accepted by Abraham and Yitzhak to marry into, but he went and he married into that family. He has from her 2 children, Yeush and Ya'alam. That's the 4th. Now, Aholibama ends up having an adulterous relationship with Elifaz, and they end up having Korach. You have him here. That's the Mamzer from Elifaz. Now, I also mentioned here, we're going to discuss a little bit of the children of Elifaz and also the Alufs. So before we go to Elifaz, let's look at the Alufs. The Alufs are the chieftains, you want to call them the generals, the heads of the families. And so we'll start from Elifaz. Elifaz doesn't actually get the category of Aluf, believe it or not. It goes to his children. So you have Aluf Teman, Aluf Omar, Aluf Sefo. Sefo, I put 176 here because there's a secret brought down by Rabbi Mansour as to why his name is 176. How is he all connected? Sefo, if you look in the Mefarshim, was one of the individuals who ended up getting captured. He ended up escaping being captured, ended up going to Rome, Italy, in order to build up that empire, which were from the children of ESAV. That's Aluf Sefo. Then you have Aluf Ga'atam and Aluf Kenaz. So those are the first 5 of the Alufim. Then you go to the children of Reuel, Aluf Nachat. You have Aluf Zerach, Aluf Shama, and Aluf Mizah. And you have those 9. Number 10 is the son of ESAV, Aluf Yeush and Aluf Ya'alam. Those are his children. Then you have Aluf Korach, which is, it comes from ESAV's wife, and he gets the category of Aluf. And then you have Aluf Amalek, who is both the son of Elifaz and also the grandson of Elifaz. The reason why it gets a little confusing is because a lot of times the children of ESAV slept with other married women. They ended up having a lot of bastard children, and so it sometimes makes it a little bit confusing. Let's continue with Elifaz on the other side. Now Elifaz, over here, he has 7-8 kids. We'll explain that. He has one wife, one pilegesh, a concubine. You don't get to use that word so often, concubine. I guess that was the kosher way that they would go take, another wife and not have an issue with their first wife. And then he had 2 adulterous relationships and mistresses. So Elifaz has his first wife. We'll just call her Isha because I didn't see it quickly inside. I'm sure that one of the Mefarshim mentioned it, but her name is not originally mentioned in the Torah. And he has Teman, Omar, Tzefo, Gatam, and Kenaz. So those are the children of Elifaz. You have here 5. Then he ends up having an adulterous relationship with Eshet Seir. Eshet Seir, he's from the Chivi. And from that relationship, she gets pregnant and ends up having a daughter called Timna. Timna is a mamzeret, that she comes from a adulterous relationship. But he ends up going and he ends up marrying his own daughter. If you can imagine, Elifaz marries his daughter, and then he takes her as a pilegesh to the second wife, and he ends up having a son. That's the son Amalek. So Amalek is really the son of Elifaz, and he's also the grandson of Elifaz using the system. He then goes and sleeps with the wife of his father, ESAV, Aholibama, also called Yehudit, and he ends up having another mamzer into the family called Korach. What's interesting about this is later on, the family of Levi, they end up naming one of the children Korach. And if you look at the Rashi over there, Rashi says that they should not have named him Korach because Korach already was someone that had a name and had a koach of tum'ah because of the way that original Korach was. And they say you should always name the children after people of good merit and that do proper things. But you could see from here, this was a very, the relationship of the family of ESAV and Elifaz, they slept with each other's wives, they produced children, but this is where Amalek comes from. So Amalek is both the grandson and of ESAV. He's also the son and grandson of Elifaz. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Welcome back to shul.com. We are learning about Elifaz. He's the son of ESAV, the Bechor of ESAV, and he's also the friend of Iyov. There's a book that we have in Iyov in the Ketubim. Job, they call him, not Job. It's spelled Job, but it's pronounced Job. And he's an interesting guy, Iyov. Iyov ends up marrying Dinah. Dinah, who is the daughter of Yaakov, that came from Shechem ben Hamor when he ended up raping her, and she ends up marrying Iyov. Now Elifaz is his good friend, and there's a lot of stuff about this guy Elifaz which is very complicated. The whole thing doesn't make sense, but let's take a look. So it says here his mother was Basemat, also known as Ada. She's the daughter of Elon Achiti, and now Esav marries her when he's 40, just like his father Yitzhak. Yitzhak got married at 40. He wanted to give off the impression that he was also righteous, and he married her at 40. Now, Basemat was a pagan worshiper. She loved idols, and Yitzhak and Rivka were very upset about this, and that's why they called her Basemat, because from the word Besamim, like we said, she would do all these type of incest and type of burning of all types of herbs in order to give pleasure to the Avodah Zarah. And we've mentioned here in the past, these forms of Avodah Zarah worked. They had reactions to their prayers. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. People were not stupid. They did these things because they seemingly saw results. And so it was a real desire to worship these things because they produced, you understand? As opposed to possibly worshiping God, it was maybe more of a challenge or not as easy. So this is Basemat, and they also call her Ada, like we said, because Edi is jewelry, and she used to worship jewelry and gold and silver to worship also for idols. Now Rashi says her name was Ada, but that she called her Basemat because she burned incense. Besamim, the Chida tells us that her name was Basemat, that they called her Ada because of the ornaments and the jewelry, Edi, that she made for the Avodah Zarah. Let's continue. Okay, now the name Elifaz is interesting. It means Eli, my God, is gold. Eli, my God, and Paz is gold. So So they say here that some say the name of Elifaz is an expression of Elifaz's righteousness. Why is his righteousness? Because it pronounces Eli. Eli is the name of God. You put in the beginning of the name like a golden crown upon his head. Eli, my God, is on my head. Paz. So some say no, it was a name that showed something proper on him. Some say no, it meant Elifaz, that my God was gold. So Tosafot says that Elifaz was a pagan name, which means Paz, gold, is my God, Eli, and this can allude to Elifaz and ESAV's excessive desire for running after money and wealth. We see that. When he runs after Yaakov says, listen, I'll give you all my money instead of killing me. Okay, he agrees, he takes the money. So seemingly they were after a lot of wealth, and we know that ESAV's blessing was from the fat of the land, and to get all the blessings that are existing in this world. It is possible that the name was given by ESAV, who was a pagan worshiper, while Elifaz himself was righteous. So it could be that even if his name was given with bad intentions, Elifaz himself was a good person. Let's continue. Gold is for me. That's the next one that comes down here. According to the Rokeach, it says that Timnah paid Elifaz a lot of gold so that he should take her as a concubine. Who was Timnah? Remember I showed you earlier on the board that Timnah was the daughter of Elifaz when he slept with the wife of Seir. He ended up having a Mamzerim daughter, Timnah. Now, Timnah wanted to be into the family of Abraham Avinu. So what'd she do? She ended up doing whatever she can. She said she would be his concubine, not even an official wife, not even with the title, just to be part of the family. He accepted and he took her. So he ended up marrying his daughter that came from an adulterous relationship, and he ended up having a son from there that was Amalek, which ended up becoming the arch enemy of the Jewish people. And his name, according to this, reflects gold. Paz is for me, Eli. That was the other interpretation. So it's also suggested that because Elifaz married Timnah, this girl, a woman who was not suitable because she was a mamzeret and all this, and for the sake of money. Why money? Because Timnah came from the family of Seir, even though it was an adulterous relationship. She was from a wealthy royal family. They seemingly had a lot of money, and that their son ended up becoming Amalek, which was a very evil person. And the Gemara tells us in Masechet Kedushin, page 71, that someone who marries a lady or a wife for money ends up having children that are unsuitable. This is the example that they use from the original one in the Torah. Now, he'd never actually killed Yaakov Avinu. The Midrash tells us that when Esav tells Elifaz, you got to go after Yaakov and kill him, he didn't want to, because he grew up in the house of Yitzhak. He knew that Yaakov was righteous, Yitzhak was righteous. He knew his father was wild and was asking for something that was difficult for him to do. And so Yaakov convinces him not to take him, instead take all the money. He says, your father will be okay with it. Now, Esav tells Elifaz, look, if you don't bring me the head of Yaakov, Esav says, I'm going to take your head. What was he saying with that? One of the forms of Avodah Zarah of the Terafim is that they used to take the heads of the enemy, particularly the firstborn of the family, and sometimes the firstborn, the son of a firstborn, and they would skin off the head of the person. They would chop his head off and skin off the whole entire head, and then they would put hot stones inside of the skin, along with all the hair that's still on the face, and then they would boil the head and the skin in a form that would shrink the head, and by doing that they were able to form a type of idol worship in Avodah Zarah that had a special power because it was a Bechor. The Bechor of this point in time were the ones who did all the spiritual work. Any spiritual work in the families were always done by the firstborn. There was a very big significance given to that. This was later transferred away from them after Chet HaEgel in the Midbar. But prior to that, even amongst all the families of Abraham, they had this and they knew about this value. So Esav tells Elifaz, you're firstborn. Yaakov said he bought the Bechorah, now he's the firstborn. You either get me his head or I'm going to make a little worship idol doll with your head. Elifaz didn't take that so simple. He went to sleep with his father's wife. The guy said, "Oh, you talking to me this way? No problem. I'm going to teach you how you talk to your son like this." And he ended up sleeping with his father's wife, and he ended up having a son, Korah, that came from it. That's you have to understand. This was wild family mafia style stuff. But when you learn it and you see it, like, wow, it's a wild. This was so. Does this stuff even exist today? Absolutely. If you go to do the museum, Ripley's Believe It or Not, I have nothing to do with them, so I didn't get any no promotions on that. But you see there, they have there what's called the shrunken head of the Hivaldos of South America. And if you research this stuff, I don't know how much the Hivaldos knew about all this, but if you see what they had done, these little mini Avodah Zarah worship heads, they would sometimes even tape up the mouth or the eyes in order to control the spirit of the person that they killed from coming after them. There seemingly is something to that. It's not just happenstance or anything. There is a form of this that worked. And it's interesting because ESAV's argument with Elifaz is that if you don't bring me Yaakov's, it's going to be yours. I guess he gave him all the money, and then ESAV was maybe quelled for a little bit, and then Elifaz took his revenge by sleeping with his father's wife, having a son, and then I don't know what happened from there, but let's continue. He excelled in his father's honor. So Elifaz was also very much, had kibud avayim, just like his father, ESAV had for Yitzhak. And because of this, Amalek ended up becoming a very powerful nation. And this is brought down in Tanat Deve Eliyahu Rabbah 24. Also look at the Bamidbar 24-20, where Amalek is called Reshit Goyim Amalek. They are the first. The Or HaHaim says, why was he called this, an important nation, until his destruction? Because he respected, Elifaz respected his father, just like ESAV respected Yitzhak. Now, Timnah is the daughter of Elifaz and also his concubine. So according to Rashi, Elifaz ends up sleeping with the wife of Seir, and they end up begetting Timnah. When Timnah grows up, Elifaz takes her as a concubine, even though she was his daughter. Now, together they end up begetting Amalek, who's a bastard child, and whose descendants become the archenemy of the Jewish people. The Talmud tells us that Timnah really, over here it's brought down in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 99b, that Timnah really wanted to convert and marry to the family of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. She was willing, listen, she didn't choose how she was born. She was born from this union of Elifaz and the wife of Seir. But she wanted to be a member of the family of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. She got rejected by all of them. The children of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. They didn't take her. The only one who would take her was Elifaz. And because that she got rejected by all of them, and she wanted to make teshuvah in some capacity, she ended up producing a child who became the biggest enemy, who wants to slaughter all the Jewish people. Which is crazy, but it's not so crazy. She gave it a try. She said, listen, I'll go into any one of these three avot. Give me anybody. I'll be second. I'll be the maid of them. She knew that they were involved in building the religion. And she said, I will do whatever necessary. They rejected her. They ended up producing the biggest arch enemy that has murdered more Jewish people than anybody. Now, some suggest the reason they didn't want to accept her was because she was the product of adultery. We're going to get into that in a second. Now, it's noteworthy that according to Rashi above, that Timnah was the daughter of Elifaz, which means she was already the descendant of Abraham and Yitzhak. Why? Because Elifaz was the son of ESAV. So she already was in that family, but still, she wanted to convert completely because her mother was a pagan, the wife of Seir, and she wanted to completely remove herself from this stuff. She saw what type of thing was going on in the houses, the family, the culture. She didn't want it. She wanted to go back, and she was rejected. Now, this whole thing of sleeping with the daughter and all this type, it has to be well said and understood that all the 12 Shevatim, 11 Shevatim really, with the exception of Yosef, were all born with twin sisters. and they all married their sisters. So this type of stuff of marrying sisters was very common. It wasn't a problem back then. And furthermore, that's why I said when people say Yaakov married 2 sisters, that's why she died. No, that might be an opinion. Of course, there might be one opinion that brings this. But what are you going to tell me about all the Shevatim? They all lived in Israel. They also married their sisters. What are you going to say there? And so it was quite common back then that they did this. Now, Korach was Elifaz's son and also his stepbrother. Why stepbrother? Let's take a look. Rashi writes that Elifaz had an adulterous relationship with his father's son, with his father's wife, Aholibama. I showed you here on the chart. You see Aholibama over there? So on Aholibama, Elifaz ends up sleeping with her. Maybe he got in a fight after that whole situation with Yaakov, and he ends up having a bastard son called Korach, the Mamzer. Now, they produce Korach. Now, this has nothing to do with the Jewish Korach. Obviously, there is a discussion, like I told you, that why did the family of Levi follow and Kehat into naming one of their descendants the same, like this guy. This guy came from an adulterous relationship. Why would you name someone like that, especially someone from the family of Levi? And so later on, he's listed as the son of Aholibama, but also of Elifaz. So he goes down, if you list, as one of the children of ESAV, even though he doesn't come from ESAV directly, it comes from the son. Let's continue. Elifaz ends up becoming the friend of Eov. Eov, it says here, in the book of Eov, it describes all the terrible calamities that fell Eov, and he had 3 friends. One of his 3 friends that he had was Elifaz Hatimni. Some say he was from the area of Teman, Yemen. Some say no. There was an area south of the Dead Sea, according to Rabbi Kaplan, that was called there Teman. It could be that was the original area, and then they ended up moving to where is modern day Yemen. It should be note that they probably are connected. Why? Because it says that the beracha that Yitzhak gave to Esav was al chadbecha techiyeh, that you will live by the sword. If you go to Yemen, or if you Google and check it out, I had many Yemenite friends, close friends of my father and of our family that were from Yemen. They were born in Yemen. They brought artifacts, books. They taught us a lot about the culture. The Yemenite culture, they wear the long jalabiyas, the long cloaks that the Sfaradim wear. That this was the custom of the day. It's not a modern. It's a non-modern dress, but a very humble and modest dress, even for men, because when men wear it, you don't see their figure. But what's interesting about the Yemenite is that they wear a sword in the front. So to show you what I mean, I'll show you a picture so you guys can see it. Yemenite.
Is it like the one that curves?
Yes, that curves on the bottom. Yes, I will show it to you.
I always wonder why that.
So if you take a look, here is a great picture. I'll show you 2 pictures. Here you go. Here's one of them that I found. They call it the Yemen Jambiya, or we call it the Jalabiya in Lebanese Arabic. But if you take a look at it, you see right there?
Yeah.
You see he wears it, and then he wears a special belt with a sword. That's a real dagger that they wear in the front. This is not like 100 years ago. This is like modern right now, today, if you go to Yemen. Now I'll show you another one. Here you go. Take a look. This guy actually has it out ready to go. Let me get you another. Oh, here's a great one of how the sword looks. Take a look. It's a real dagger that goes into the belt. See that, Ed?
Yeah.
And they do it till today. These are the children. It says Elifaz Hatimni, that was the beracha that they got from Yitzhak and Esav, and the kids ran with it. They took it and they valued what this was. Let's see if there's another photo that I can show you. Here's an old photo. Take a look. This is a really old photo, black and white. So this is from back in the day. Also wearing it, and you see this is their custom, that they wear the swords. This is from the beracha that Yitzhak gives to Esav, and then Elifaz takes it and he goes with it. It's interesting. Why? Because sometimes there's something that exists in the culture, but the Torah will usually direct us as to where this came, if it was from one of the families that were in the Torah. So I found that to be very interesting. Now, some say that this Elifaz Hatimni that was friends with Eov was the same Elifaz. Some say not, but we follow the opinion that it is, like the Ibn Ezra and Targum Yonatan on Bereshit 36:12 say. Now it's interesting that in this follows the opinion that the story of Eov, this whole history, in the timeline, chronological history, it happened during the time of Yaakov Avinu, because I told you Eov married the daughter of Yaakov, so they were alive during that time. And that's why when Abraham Avinu says to the Meraglim to go check if there's any tree or in the Eretz Utz, he mentions the word Utz. That's, by the way, where the Wizard of Oz comes from, the word Utz, the Wizard of Utz, of Oz. That comes from the Torah. So he says to go to Utz. So they tell him, what's Utz? They said that this guy Eov was a real tzaddik. And they said, if he's still around, then you're probably not going to have success, waging war in Israel. So he said, is he still around? And at the time, he had just died. So he lived from the time of Dinah Yaakov all the way till the time around Moshe Rabbeinu when the Meraglim went in, which was right after they left Egypt, and he was still around. He had just died. They also had a custom back then that they wouldn't bury the bodies until a righteous person died. So what they do is they would put all the bones and all the bodies into like a cave or into a temporary pit or area. And then when a righteous person would die, they felt that he would be able to carry into the spiritual world, Olam Haba, Gan Eden, all the other people. And so when the Meraglim are going to the town, they're burying Eov. But who else? They realized Eov was a big tzaddik. They were burying everybody else also along with it. And so they're coming in. They're like, how are all these thousands of people and millions of people being buried? They all died now. They didn't understand what was really, at least on the surface, going on. Maybe through research later they figured it out. But they went in with a bad spirit, 10 of the 12 tribes, the leaders. They went in that they didn't want to go into the land. They were figuring out anything they can. And when they saw this sparked, a lot of good ammunition to them to help them go challenge, the directive of being able to go into the land. Now, it says here, in the discussions that Elifaz had and his two friends had with Eov, he shares many deep thoughts and ideas, if you look in Eov. And according to the Hachamim, he spoke Beruach HaKodesh, Elifaz. So he seemingly had that divine inspiration. And you could see that brought down in the Tanchuma, Buber, and Vayera 38. Now it says in the Midrash, in Agadat Bereshit 38, and Devarim Rabbah, Va'et Hanan 2:20, that Elifaz was a tzaddik, he was a righteous man, as a result of being brought up on the lap of Yitzhak Avinu. Now let's take a look. Now the descriptions of Elifaz don't seem to fit a picture as someone who's indulged in adultery and incest. Now leave aside the incest part, because I told you that this wasn't an avon for them at the time to do this, but he was an adulterer. An adulterer, even the Gilui Ayarot, which are one of the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, that a man can't go with someone else's wife. That is the main mitzvah of Gilui Arayot. According to some opinions, the Gentiles are permitted to go with their daughters and their own family. It's just going with someone else's wife, which is the main sin of the Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach. When a man goes with a lady and says that is his lady, it's his wife, that is what would be adultery. If the guy sleeps with his sister, okay, it might not be appropriate or proper or for the culture, but in regards to the avon of the Torah, the Shiva Mitzvot B'nei Noach, that would not be one of them, according to many opinions and according to Rabbi Musafi in Yerushalayim. Okay, so let's continue. So there's some explanations that we have to do. How could it be that a guy like this, with all this history that we're talking about, is a person that seemingly has Ruach HaKodesh? Are they tied together? Are they not? Let's see. Some say, and this is brought down by the Rabbi Naor Orbach in Ulevavo Yavin in Jerusalem 2015, page 219, that Elifaz left the home of Yitzchak and went to live in Seir. Remember I told you he ended up sleeping with the wife of Seir. That was the original founder. He strayed from the path of righteousness. So originally he was righteous and then he strayed. Okay? Then some say no, he started off wicked and he did all the wicked things, then no, at the end he ended up becoming righteous. So according to one midrash, and that's brought down by Bereshit Rabbati, that Elifaz started out as a rasha, and then he repented. He became a tzaddik later on in his life. He became righteous, and he had all those relationships, those adulterous, incestuous relationships, all before he repented. According to this opinion, this is brought down by Rabbi Sitron, who put this all together. It is possible that Elifaz was still a rasha when he spared Yaakov, that he agreed to spare him due to him having mercy on him, not because he was a tzaddik per se. So you can use that maybe he was a tzaddik and became a rasha, right, or a rasha and became a tzaddik. Sounds more in line. So let's take a look. Elifaz was 13 years old when he goes after to kill Yaakov. Yaakov is 63. He's 50 years his senior when he does it. So what that tells me is that ESAV got married at 40 and didn't have children for 10 years. It's interesting to note. And so he was born, it says here, when ESAV, which means that he was born when his father ESAV was 64 years old. So why does he say here 64? Let's take a look here. That Yaakov, ESAV's twin, was 84 when he married Rachel, which was 7 years after his encounter with Elifaz. Oh, so here they're using the calculation as follows: that first he went to go study 14 years in Shem Ve'evet, and then Elifaz caught up with him, not Elifaz catching up and then going to Shem Ve'evet. The reason why I say the other way is because if somebody's rich, the Hachamim Chazal tell us that he should get married and then go learn Torah. But if a person doesn't have money, he should go stay in yeshiva, learn Torah, and then get married, because once he gets married, he's going to have to focus on finding money. Right. So when Yaakov Avinu left his father's house, he had money, so he went to go get married. But he was seemingly robbed before. So then he had no money, so they went to go learn Torah for 14 years, and then he went to go get married and have a parnasah, work by Lavan. So it depends on two opinions. Right. Of course, when you're learning these stories, there's always counter opinions. When he came to comfort Iyov, Dinah's husband, and that was the same time of Elifaz, he would have been at least 45 years old, but was more likely he had been 59 years old. Let's take a look what he says here on the bottom. He says, according to the opinion that Elifaz of the Iyov story was the same person, the son of ESAV, that Iyov was married to Dinah. The marriage happened sometime after the abduction and rescue of Dinah, which took place when Yaakov was 99 years old. Now, interesting to note, when Shimon and Levi go into the town and take Nekama, Achzona Yaset Achotenu, it's our sister, a harlot, that we're going to let this type of thing happen, and they clean up and murder the entire town of Shechem and the entire royal family of Shechem and Hamor and everyone that was in charge there. Dinah didn't want to leave. She said, you want me to come back home right now to Yaakov? Yaakov was already upset that I left the house and all this happened. Now you want me to come back? So what did Shimon say? Shimon says, listen, I will take you as a husband temporarily, and I'll marry you, and I will take care of you. And that's what he did. He ended up marrying Dinah, and he ended up having a son. That son was called Shaul ben HaKenaanit. Mordechai, come. So that ends up becoming Shaul ben HaKenaanit. So if you look in the Torah, it says, why Shaul ben HaKenaanit? She wasn't a Kenaanite, but she acted like the Kenaanite girls who go out at the parties and go hang out in the street. That's not the way of a Jewish girl. And so the Torah mentions her as Shaul ben HaKenaanit. Now it says here, Yaakov was 84 when he married Leah and Rachel, after which he spent another 13 years in the house of Lavan and 18 months on the road. Since Iyov and his wife had 10 children, at the time of the story, it says that he had Shiv'ana Banim, 7 plus 3, which presumably takes at least 10 years if you have one child a year. Yaakov would have been 109 years old at the time, and since Elifaz was 64 years younger than him, he would have been at least 45 years old. If we assume that Dinah did not start having babies until she was at least 12 years old, we can add 4 years since she was abducted at the age of 8. In addition, it is likely that the children of Iyov were at least 10 years old at the time of the story, as the verse describes how they would have make parties on a regular basis. And someone that's under 10 years old is probably not making parties for Iyov. Now, if you look at Iyov 15-10, where Elifaz describes his groups of friends as old people, amongst us are gray-haired old men, older by far than your father. And so you can see here that they're trying to clarify this. Now, it says later on, Rabbi Menachem Azariah Mipano, the Rama Mipano, he lived in Italy. He lived during the time of the Middle Ages, where the church actually sent a group out to make a painting of him. So you can actually see a painting of the Rama Mipano. I'll show you a picture of him. Gorgeous painting, very clear. We can actually see what he looked like. Here.
What year was that?
I'll get you the year. He was in the year 1548. It was right by the Middle Ages. He died in 1620. This is one of the pictures. It's not the great one, but it's similar to the painting. Take a look at it. That's the Rama Mipano. So you can take a look at it. It's great. You know, the church, if there was, there wasn't much good that the church did to the Jewish people at all. So nothing good for that matter. But if there was something good that they did, is they took paintings of all of our rabbis, because whenever they were on high authority, they always wanted to know who were they. So we have a lot of paintings of some Gedolim that lived in Italy and to, when the Holy Roman Empire was around. So Rama Mipano lived in Italy. He wrote a book called Sefer Gilgulim, and he writes that Elifaz had a reincarnation. He came back as somebody else. Who did he come back as? It says he came back as none other than Onkelos ben Kelunicus. That was the name of his father. He wasn't, I guess, the most popular kid in school with a name like that. But Onkelos, the convert, who ended up translating the Torah to Aramit, the Targum that we do, the Shnai Mikra Chad Targum, was a Gilgul of this man Elifaz. Let's take a look. It says, just as Elifaz refused to murder Yaakov, and that his father demanded, so too Onkelos, he rejected the advice of his uncle. Who was his uncle? Titus. Titus was going out to destroy the Beit HaMikdash, and he has here a nephew who is in the meantime converting, writing a commentary which will become the magnum opus of commentaries of the Jewish people. It's unbelievable. So that was a similar reincarnation that they say. Now, they told him not to convert. He said, no, that Titus told him, why are you converting? He said, you should oppress these people. They had two different shitot. And the merit that Elifaz did not kill Yaakov, who was the pillar of Torah, he ends up getting reincarnated in Onkelos, who translated the entire Torah. This brought down the Midah, Keneged Midah, as brought down by Rabbi Aharon Yehoshua Feizin, Bnei Brak 2023, Volume 4, on Bereshit 29-11. Now, the visions to Eov, those are the Ruach HaKodesh. Now, in one of the speeches to Eov, Elifaz shares some wisdom that he receives prophetically in the visions of the night, which is Ruach HaKodesh. I don't know about Nevuah, but we'll say Ruach HaKodesh. And since the Midrash tells us in Yalkut Shimoni on Nach 549 that in this merit one of his descendants was Ovadiah, who also was a prophet found in the Trei Asad, experienced a prophetic vision in which he foretold of what? The downfall of ESAV. So it seems that Elifaz did make teshuvah because he ended up having, even at the end of his life, because he ended up having a descendant Ovadiah, who ended up also prophesying that ESAV, as big and strong as he is with all of his military might, will fall and fail at the end, as brought down on the first pasuk in Avodah, Aleph, Perek Aleph, Pasuk Aleph. So he has here a couple of interesting teachings that are said by Elifaz. So I'll read them in Hebrew and English quickly, and we'll end with that. Zechorna mihu naki avad. Think now, what innocent man was ever destroyed? Hen ba'avadav lo yaminu b'malachav yasim tahola. If he cannot trust his own servants and cast reproach on his angels. Ki adam la'amal yulad. Man was born to toil. That's a famous pitgam that you'll hear amongst the Israeli. I heard that a lot in Yeshiva Flatbush. Adam la'amal yulad. Okay. V'yadata ki shalom aholecha ufakata navecha velo techeta. You will know that all is well in your tent. When you visit your dwelling place, you will not sin. V'tivchor leshon arumim, so that you choose the language of the wise. Harishon adam tivaled, were you created before the first man. Ma yikacha libecha, how your heart has carried you away. Hen bikdoshav lo ya'amin, behold, he does not trust his holy ones. Ha'omrim la'el sur mimenu, those who say to God, stay away from us. This was all discussions that Eov had when he was going through his suffering and affliction, where he lost his children, he lost all of his homes, his real estate, then he lost his health, he lost his money, he lost everything, and then he kept strong to stay to God, and at the end God ended up doubling everything he had at the end of his life. Double the children, double the homes, double the real estate, double the wealth. And they said that anybody that would do any business with Eov, if he would only take the change, the leftover money, and touch it and put it in his pocket, everything that leftover money would touch would become blessed. It's wild. So you go to Eov, you give him $100 bill for a $1 item, you got 99 singles back. Every one of those singles that you put in your pocket that you did business or you bought anything with became successful. Everything that he touched became gold. V'tigzar omer vayakom lach. That's one of the pesukim some people say on Mosei Shabbat. And he decreed and said, and it was established. B'shesh sarot yatzileka ub'sheva lo yiga bechara. He will deliver you from 6 troubles. In 7, no harm will reach you. And that's a great way to end. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Welcome to Shul.com. We are back talking about Elifaz. Elifaz, the son of ESAV. We are trying to figure out, he's a very interesting character in the Tanakh. He comes up also in Eov. And so we've been learning a little bit about him. This is part 3. We did the chart, which I call the real housewives of ESAV. You see seemingly they slept with each other and they produced Mamzerim and children and married off, and then seemingly they married their children. It was wild stuff. That's in part 1 and part 2. We are going to part 3 now. Yes, and he ends up producing from one of the children, Amalek. Now let's take a look. Elifaz, we're reading from Otsar Ishya Tanakh. It's in essence about characters in the Tanakh and all different mamrot and different things that come up about the characters. So Elifaz ben Ada, Eshet Esav, hu Elifaz chavero shel Eov. So this is brought down that Elifaz, the son of Ada, the son of which is the wife of Esav, is the same individual that you see in Eov. Some people have an opinion that no, there was a different Elifaz Hatimni. No, according to this, it's the same person. Elifaz Hatimni, ohavo shel Eov yoshev be'eretz Teman. He was the friend of Eov and he sat in the land of Teman. Some say this is not the Yemen that we know today, but rather an area, like Rabbi Kaplan, Aryeh Kaplan says, south of the Dead Sea, which was originally called Teman. And it could be that the Temanim of today are the descendants of those people. Why? Because one of the berachot of Yitzchak to Esav was al charbecha tichyeh, that you will live on the sword. And if you look today in Yemen, the Yemenite Arabs till today were jalabiyeh, and they wore a special belt. And on this belt, they have a dagger which is stuck into the front. It's so awkward because it's not so common to see that. Why are they still doing this? This is from the blessing that Yitzchak Avinu had told them, Al Chabechat Techeh, that the way that they have authority is by walking around with weapons, swords, daggers, and they do that till today. And you see it in their culture, which is accepted, where adults and children of the like will walk around with a sword right in front of them. On their belly, and you could see that with photos of Yemenite culture today and people. You can see them in Sana and Aden and many of those places. Amar lo Eov le'Elifaz. Eov tells Elifaz, "Histakel be'esav avicha." Look at your father. Amar lo en li esek imo. And he tells him back, "I have no business looking at my father. I have nothing to do with him." So this is important because this can set forth the tone as to Elifaz making teshuvah, where maybe earlier on he was rebellious, and then later on in his life he made teshuvah, and later on this was with Eov, which was a later part of history. Amar lo Eov le'Elifaz. Eov tells him, "V'lo bno shel Esav ata? Aren't you the son of Esav? Ilu haya avicha omed. If your father was here standing and mevakesh and request she'asim oto lizon ima kilavim sheli hayiti mo'aso. If he was here and he asked me to eat with the dogs, I would be disgusted." Interesting. Elifaz ba el eshet aviv aholibama v'yalad et Korach. Elifaz went with his father's wife Aholibama, and from there he had a son called Korach. Interesting. Elifaz haya bechor Esav. He was the firstborn of Esav. V'tzivau aviv lehitgarot im bnei Yaakov, and he commanded him that you should go and make problems with the children of Yaakov. Im Eov lo nilcham bahem. But because he grew up with Eov, who was a Sadiq, and Eov ended up marrying Dinah, which was the daughter of Yaakov, Elifaz never went out to do this. Who created most of the problems? The children of Elifaz, which was Amalek and some other the Alufim. Elifaz Timni Amar la'Amalek. Elifaz tells Amalek, which is his son and grandson, Beno, B'sha'a she'amar lo Abba, mi yoresh olam hazeh v'olam haba. Who's going to take this world and the next world? Amar lo ben Israel. It says the children of Israel. Go out, my son, dig for them wells so they have water, create for them roads so they can go from place to place. If you do that, if you do this, you'll have a chilek even with the pechutim, the few of them, and you will have olam haba. Meaning, just help serve them, not that in the sense of being subservient, but hey, do what you're good at. You're good at building roads, you're good at digging wells, you have that technology. Do it to help them learn Torah and focus on their culture and their religion. Let them do what they have to do. You guys will be very successful, you'll be financially successful, you have everything you want, and you get the assist. Just like in basketball, you have the guy who shoots and gets the point, and you have the assist. You get the assist, you get the full credit. That's your job. That's what our father Yitzhak, this was the blessing he gave. Yaakov got one part, you got the other part. Timna bat Melachim aita. Timna was a descendant of Melachim. Which Melachim? From Seir. Seir was one of the kings. Ratzta lehitgayer. She wanted to convert. Uba'ata etzel Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov v'lo kibluha. She came to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, being from the children of Melachim. Now she was a Mamzerim, because Elifaz went with the wife of Seir to have this daughter Timnah. Now she didn't choose to be a Mamzerim, to be born a bastard child, but that's what seemingly she was. And she went to Abraham and said, listen, I want to make teshuvah, I want to come into your religion, I see what you guys are offering, I see what the other side has, and unfortunately they didn't accept her, and because they didn't accept her, she said, okay, if you don't want to accept me, into the main part of the family, then let's see what else is available. So she went to Elifaz, the son of ESAV, which was also part of the family, but everyone understood that was not the chosen part of the family. She ended up having the son Amalek, that all he did was cause problems. And this is brought down in Sanhedrin, page 99, Amud Bet. Now, this is important because it taught us that the cause and reaction, the action and reaction to why Amalek is the rejection. You rejected someone who came in and wanted to make teshuvah. Now, of course, maybe there were other conditions, but you can't tell me she was arura. Why? Because she wasn't from the other nations that were arur, like Abraham had said. Said certain nations in Canaan they're arur, but she wasn't from one of them. And the fact that you tell me that, okay, she came from Eshet Ish and that was a problem, okay, but we had seen sometimes where issues like that. What about Dinah? She has a daughter Asenat from being raped with, right? Shechem ben Hamor, who marries her, Yosef HaSadik. So when it came to windows to possibly have a gateway out, they found one. With this one, Timnat, that rejection from Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, 3 generations of righteous people, caused her to become a hater. That hate came out in her Amalek, who we are forced to eradicate today. Obviously, we don't know who they are today, but the Chachamim have different criteria. But that came from a form of rejection from someone who wanted to get close. She wanted to make teshuvah. She wanted to get close. A few times of being rejected, she became the biggest enemy that existed, which is a lesson. Not to reject people maybe that are wanting to have repentance. Obviously, we don't question Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. They knew what they knew, and they knew why to take her or not to take her, and we're not. But if the Torah is telling us this information, it's telling us for us to be able to see that something here was done. Let's continue. Elifaz nasa et bito. He married his daughter. Kitzad. How so? Haya ba'el ishto shel Seir. He went on to Elifaz, to the wife of Seir. Ve'adam imenu Timnah. And you had this girl Timnah that we just talked about. Ve'naseah. Later on, she got older. He took her as a pilegesh, like a concubine. Ki'ilu noseh et bito shel Seir. As if he married the daughter of Seir, even though he was the father of that girl. Al yedeh shenitgadel becheko shel Yitzchak, because he grew up in the in the chest or the bosom of Yitzhak. Nasa Sadiq v'zacha sheshara alav ruach hakodesh. He became a Sadiq and came on him ruach hakodesh. Remember, he's growing up with Yitzhak. He sees Yitzhak a prophet. He sees how he got the prophecy. He obviously realized Shemirat Einayim, Shemirat Lashon, Shemirat Oznaim, Torah, Mitzvot. He saw that. He saw what Yaakov imitating his father and getting the same thing. So he learned this. He learned the ropes. He learned it from Yitzhak Avinu. You can't learn better than that. He said, I'd rather take this Ruach HaKodesh. Whether or not he had that rebellious spirit early on, we see that at the end of his life, he goes down as a Sadiq. B'tzet Yaakov lalechet leHaran. When Yaakov was going to Haran, Kara ESAV et Elifaz. He told his son Elifaz, and he said, I command you, here's your sword, and go kill Yaakov. Interesting that he didn't himself go out to do it. Could be a lot of reasons. He wanted to respect and be by his father. We spoke about another reason why he didn't want to go to Haran, because over there, Lavan was the gangster of the town. He was the head of the mafia. And the way the mafia works is territorial. And he knew if he's going to show up in some other town like Haran and start killing up people and shooting up the area, Lavan would have killed him first before he killed Yaakov. You don't just go to another territory in the mafia and start determining, hey, do this, do that. Buddy, you go back to Beersheba. You're ESAV, you belong in Beersheba. So he sent his son. He sent his son on a mission, which was a mission that if his son didn't come back, he didn't care. He put his son's life at risk, and his son Elifaz knew that. He was aware. Elifaz he was 13 years old. So he takes 10 bandits with him to go run after him, and they reach him. Now Yaakov starts begging Elifaz, please, don't do this, don't kill me. He says, take everything I have, don't kill me. V'yishma Elifaz b'kol Yaakov v'lo himitu. He listened to Yaakov not killing him. V'yikach Elifaz v'anashav et kol asher Yaakov. They take him everything, and they stripped him bare naked.
That's like a dead man.
A dead man, but to the level of even clothing. Nothing. Yaakov had to go into a river and cover himself until he figured out how to find someone with clothing. Now, V'yiksof ESAV al Elifaz beno. When Elifaz came back, he seemingly saw Elifaz did not have the head of Yaakov. And he realized that he took all the money. He was upset. He was majorly pissed off about this. But the money, quenched his thirst for going after him to go kill Yaakov. You realize he can't go kill Yaakov, not in Yeshivat Shem Be'eved, because his Torah's Magdei Matzlim protecting him. And he can't go to Haran. He can't go to Aram Nahara and Padan Aram. He can't go to that area either, because Lavan's in charge over there. And Lavan is a bigger game. Lavan will kill ESAV before he kills Yaakov. And so because of this, he just gets mad, he accepts it, and he moves on with his life. He took everything from Yaakov and he put it into his house. Now Yaakov, when he ended up leaving Beersheba, he didn't even have clothing to wear. Esav, his brother, wanted to kill him. And he sends Elifaz, the student of Yitzhak, Amar, he goes, how am I going to do this without killing Yaakov and still not violating my father and having kibud avayim? He had that Elifaz kibud avayim like his father. And he calls it the commandment of his father, mitzvah. It was a mitzvah, it was a commandment. Gazlo kol mamono, he stole all the money. Vafilu kol begadav, even his clothing. V'hinichu arum, he left him naked. V'ani nechshav kamet, and a poor man is considered like he's dead. Now Yaakov did keep one thing, which was his cane, and inside of his cane it was a hollow cane, makel, and in there he would keep oil. What kind of oil? So it's brought down in the Mefarshim that why is that oil important? What does it have to do with anything? And why did he ended up keeping the makel? So that oil was a very special oil. It was an oil that was also stored in the pachim ketanim that he went to go when he went back over the river, the Ma'avad Yabok, when he ended up going over the river and going back to get these little pachim. Why would he put himself at risk to go at night over a river, leave his family, his wife, his kids? Because that oil was a special oil. When Noach is on the Teva, and the waters, the waters ended up that receded, they went down. He ended up wanting to find out where was the land visible somewhere, because he was in his teva and it was floating. So he ends up sending the Orev doesn't want to go, comes back. Then he sends the dove goes and returns back with the branch of an olive tree, and with it some olives on the branch. So obviously he was able to identify the branch from its leaves. That's how you identify a lot of times. There's an app now that I saw recently on the App Store, which you can take and put it on any leaves, and it will show you what the name of the plant is, if it's healthy, can you eat it, not eat it, all the stuff about it. It's very interesting, and it determines it on leaves. So Noach understood all nature. He sees the leaves and he understood it. Now on that branch was also olives. So he seemingly took from those olives and squeezed oil. And he kept that oil. And he put it into little jugs, and he gave that to his children. Shem went to Eved and went all the way to Abraham, all the way to Yitzhak, and then Yaakov got access to this. And he kept that oil in the Pachim Ketanim and in his Makel. When he crossed over the river and realized that he forgot those Pachim, they were not just little jugs. In there was the oil. And they connect that oil with having gone down generation to generation all the way to the first Bet HaMikdash. It went to the Mishkan, first Bet HaMikdash, second Bet HaMikdash, and that was the oil they discovered on Hanukkah to use. So it wasn't just seemingly he went back for jugs. Went back for a specific oil there. Let's continue. Shiv'at nevi'im nitnabe'u le'omot ha'olam. There were 7 prophets that went for the other nations, the Gentile. Ve'elohim, who are they? Bil'am ve'aviv, Bil'am and his father. Ve'iyov, Elifaz Timni, ve'chudei, and has more on it. That's in Baba Batra, page 15. Amar lo hakadosh baruch hu le'Elifaz. God told Elifaz, which means he was a prophet. God doesn't talk to us. He spoke to Elifaz, so let's put that out there. That's brought down in Eov Daled Dashir Gimel. Ani ma'amid b'mecha ben navi shifna mi bet avicha b'chazon shne'emar chazon Obadiah. So he tells him in a prophecy, God, that he's going to end up having a descendant, Obadiah. Obadiah is one of the prophets in today Assad.
Elifaz was.
Elifaz had a descendant called Obadiah who converted to Judaism and became a prophet, and he prophesies the downfall of ESAV. So Elifaz goes down as a Sadiq, for sure. We see this constantly in here. Okay, now it says, Yavo Bildad HaShuchi v'tzofar Namati v'Elifaz HaTimni v'ya'idu b'hem b'Yisrael shekaymu et kol Torah kula Masechet Avodah Zarah Gimel Amud Aleph. Now Bildad HaShuchi was one of the friends of Eov. The other one, Sofer HaNamati, that was another friend, and Elifaz HaTimni. Those were the 3 friends of Eov. And when God punishes Eov, I should say punish, but when he tested Eov and took away everything, the one thing he didn't take away is 3 friends. Because he said, that's where the Ma'amar comes, O Chabruta, O Metuta, O my friends, or death, that even when God took everything away, he needed to give Eov and leave with Eov a few friends to be able to consult and have some therapy to discuss with him what was happening in order to help him. And that's brought down as Avodah Zarah Gimel Mun Al. Shloshet ro'eh Eov halchu lebet ha'evel. 3 of his friends of Eov went to the house of mourning of Eov. V'sharat alehem ruach hakodesh, and all 3 of them got ruach hakodesh from going to visit the house of mourning of Eov. That's brought down in Kohelet Rabbah, Zayin Dashbet. Shloshet ro'eh Eov v'gomer v'yavadu yachdav. Ben kol echad ve'echad 300 parsa u'minayin hayu yodim. So it says between each one was 300 parsot. This brought in Baba Batra 15. Actually, this is Baba Batra 16 Amud Bet. Parsaot is a distance between them. So 300 of a measure of parsa between each one. And we can look at the Gemara to understand the detail of that. The 3 friends of Eov heard about all the difficulty and bad that came on Eov. They saw all of the fruit orchards drying out quickly. The bread of the meals was becoming basar chai, live flesh. And the wine was becoming blood. It was getting really bad, really fast, and even they were very surprised at such a thing because he was a big tzaddik, Eov. It says, "Ubegadai arubim tafshit and Eov." Kachamar Elifaz the Eov. Elifaz said this to Eov. Otam anashim sheyadat abem shehem arubim b'mitzvot. Those people that you know that they are naked from good deeds, from mitzvot. Havshatat mehem et bigdehem. Take off their clothing. Va'amarta. מכיוון שהם רשעים, אני פושט בהם. Because they are wicked, אני פושע בהם. I go after them. It's discussing here a little bit of that people that don't have mitzvot, they end up getting punished. But what about Sadiq? So it must mean that Hashem takes the clothing, which is their mitzvot that they wear, the begadim, which they say when a person does mitzvot, that is his garments in the next world. If he does averot, that's his garments. Meaning, if he does, meaning in this world you can hide it. In the next world, everyone's going to dress with what they serve themselves. So if he was modest in this world, he covered himself. In the next world, he's modest. In this world, maybe it doesn't mean anything. A person or woman can go around dressing the way she wants or he wants. But in the next world, that modesty is going to be in front of everyone. So in the next world, everyone's going to know, hey, wait, why is that guy walking around naked here? Why is he walking around with a Speedo in the Olam Haba in front of all the rabbis? No, I want to wear something. No, you got to wear what you took upon yourself here. We're going to allow the same thing. So it's almost a sense like that. Of course, there's teshuvah where a person can do it, but there's no teshuvah in the next world. Yes. And one more thing. Gam shav, gam yasis beno, Elifaz hu shav v'tzofar shezakhan harbe me'avicha. It says Elifaz, he would sit and he aged more than his father, and this is the end of it. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.